everyone, and welcome to another episode of Small Talk. I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie. Together we are ThinkerThemer, and this is the series where we talk about some smaller, shorter, filler style games eventually, but we spend a lot of the episode talking about what we've been up to in the past fortnight, and we answer some infrequently asked questions about the channel or about us. You really only have to ask a question once and we'll generally answer it.
That's correct.
But we do usually start off this series with a little bit of chit chat about what we've been up to in the last fortnight. And we do feel it would be remiss of us not to mention the US Supreme Court decision that was made in this weekend gone. And even though we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about that, of course we are super passionate about it in terms of being unequivocally pro-choice. But we're not going to talk about that topic. We're going to park it because we understand that board games and channel content is a way of kind of getting away from the news, and with all the uncertainty going on in the world, it is a little bit of joy for a lot of people. And so we're going to talk about board games. So with that out of the way, what have we been up to in this last fortnight? Well, we released our studio video. So if you've been watching the channel for a while, we have been working really hard at getting our games up on shelves and out of cupboards and into some kind of semi-organized but certainly visible way of showing off our games. And we had such a lovely response from all of you about that video.
A lot of controversy in terms of the our heights.
Our height difference.
As I predicted,
Maggie did. She actually, when we started recording, Maggie said, this is going to be strange for people because we're standing up. And I thought, I thought we'd done some videos where we're standing up before.
No.
Some of our travel vlogs, I know that there's a bit of footage of us walking around, but Maggie was like, no, us standing next to each other. And it did. We had a lot of people contact us and say, I thought Amy was taller.
Yeah, and I knew, because whenever we're editing, I'm like, why does Amy, like when we're sitting down, Amy always looks taller, probably in this video as well. Because I kind of hunched down a bit, and also I don't know if it's like my torso is shorter as well. So it's like I've got longer legs but a shorter torso. I don't know what's going on. It's a weird kind of combo.
It is a bit of a mirage, but I am...
It's an optical illusion.
I'm definitely shorter. I was saying in the Discord that I have tall energy.
I also always sit back. I kind of like, even here, like I'm more sitting back, and you tend to be like sit on the edge of your seat.
Well, I joke with Maggie and I tell her it's because I have better posture because I go to Pilates.
Not a joke. That's a fact. That is a fact. Yes.
So I've been trying to convince her to come to Pilates with me.
I am
off
not
the back
into
of that
Pilates.
video.
No, won't do it.
But anyway, we did have a question from Hannah, which was exactly how tall are we, or how short are we, as it might be. I am 5'3",
and I'm 5'6".
Yes,
so almost. I'm like, I'd say I'm just probably 5'5" to 5'6", but closer to 5'6" than 5'5", if that makes any sense.
Yeah, so there is a bit of a height difference between us, and Maggie is probably more like average height, I would say.
Yeah,
I did call you short.
As I was saying, like an average, human size.
I'm bringing down our couple average. It's fine.
But to be fair, like when we met, like a lot of people are like, oh, you're so much shorter than I thought. But that's because a lot of the people that we met in the board gaming world are very,
really
very tall. It's uncharacteristically tall. I feel like tall people are overrepresented in board gaming land.
Yeah, you're either short or really tall.
Yeah.
There's no in between.
I don't know what that's about. I don't know why that correlation, but that's a thing.
I still can't believe how tall Richard Rado is in real. He is so tall. So tall. And it's the boys from Covray as well, also extremely tall.
Yes.
But that was the first thing that was mentioned.
Some height trivia for you.
Lots of height discussion. The other thing that was talked about a lot was our question about our tea vessels.
Yeah, hot drink vessels.
We asked for advice on what type of teacup to use with our new board game table. We got so many suggestions, so thank you so much. And we did look into a lot of different options. I don't think we articulated our problem very well.
Yeah, probably the main thing is the lid. It's been something that is covered but ready to drink from, not just something that will fit. And
here's our problem. We have a lot of non-gamer friends who don't understand the fragility of
and the preciousness
of both the game and the table, and the risk of dropping liquid on it. In fact, last time we went on a trip with them, when we went on a houseboat, someone dropped a whole glass of red wine on top of one of our games.
Bang. Yeah.
On top of one of our games, and like
cardboard, like all
it
the
was all cardboard, and it was just soaking in, and they were just staring at it,
staring at it, going,
I was like, can someone pick it up? Can someone put something on it? So there's interesting. So in our minds, we're like, well, it has to have a lid because they're going to take it out of the cup holders and then they're going to balance it on the side of the table or they're going to put it onto the table. Like there's no avoiding that. Yeah. And then most likely they will probably tip it over at some point. And so it's like, what is the perfect solution? And then we have tried with some thermos style cups before. And then what we found is that it's terrifying
just keeps
to drink from. It's too hot. Yeah. And there's like a small little opening and you're just waiting for
concentrating all that lava into one point in your mouth.
You're going to burn like the whole inside of your mouth.
Yeah, it's quite confronting.
It is very confronting. So that hasn't worked either.
And then what happens is people kind of go, I want to let it cool down, so they leave it open, which then defeats the purpose of having a
But a lot of people did put in some great comments around filling up your thermos with liquid that's the temperature at which you want to drink it at.
Or topping it up with some cold
water after you put the boiling water in. So that is a great tip.
Good tip.
We probably are making our tea too hot.
Far too hot.
For those types of things that keep it
Lesson
really hot.
learned. Yeah.
Lesson learned. So that's one thing. And then secondly, we found this brand of cup. And now I can't remember it for the life of me because of the C. Maybe it's Contigo or something.
Oh, yeah.
And it has an auto seal.
Oh, that's
so you have to press a button to drink.
Yeah, as you're holding it, you press it and it kind of opens.
Yeah, and then you let it go and it instantly seals, which means friends can't leave it open on the table.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be
the next thing to try.
The next thing to try, as well as putting it in at drinking temperature. So thank you so much for all of the comments.
Yeah, great tips.
There was some really
great for brainstorming.
Great tips. Yeah. Now, what else have we been up to this weekend?
We also did a bit of trialed a little bit of, is it astrophotography? Like when you're photographing the stars at night, which I was surprised. It's something that I'd never really even thought of. And then, we started trialing and it's like going, this is actually pretty cool. You can get some really, really great effects pretty quickly. Like I thought it would be something that would take, so much tinkering and hours, but it was like, no, if you've got a good location, and we have really awesome locations around the peninsula. So we went to Cape Schanck. There's a lighthouse there. And so, you get the combo of the light itself of the lighthouse and a different shutter speed, so you can kind of capture the, sort of freeze that light beam in different directions, or just have the blown kind of effect if it's sort of moving around. So lots and lots of fun. We were there for hours and hours. Yeah. I'm like, if it wasn't freezing, if it hadn't been so cold,
it was absolutely
I
freezing.
would have gladly stayed there till 2 in the morning.
Yeah, it is still, it's winter in Australia. And but actually that means it gets dark earlier, which is a good time to go out and take photos. And it was a bit of a cloudy day, but we'll put some photos up of some of the results that we had. It was a lot of fun. And we decided to do it because we have a couple of, we obviously have our overhead camera for when we're doing game reviews, and we have this front-facing camera, and they're pretty good cameras because they're for our filming, but we also like to, when we're traveling, carry our cameras with us, and so we wanted to get better at taking photos in all different situations, and just thought this would be a fun thing to try.
It really was.
It really was. So and it's really nice to just try different effects to the photos, and anyway, we had a great time.
It's that whole thing of painting with light, because then it's like, if you have a really long exposure, it's like you can actually just grab a flashlight and do a quick kind of like flash a couple of times to like paint a little bit of the foreground.
Or the one where we're carrying like a little lantern and it's got a light inside it, and you can give off all these different effects. And the house that we were taking a photo of that had those lights on. What I didn't really, when you see these types of photos on Instagram or wherever else you see them, and it's stupid because of course, but I'd never realized that it was pitch black.
Yeah, because the exposure is left for so long, it actually looks like it's dusk or like but it like these photos are taken in pitch darkness. Like you can't even see what you're aiming at.
No, we were wearing headlamps.
Yeah,
so
but
that
you
was
can't,
fun.
like on your preview on the display, it's pitch black, so you can't even see like what's the camera aiming at, like what's even in frame. And it's not until after you take the photo you're like, oh, okay, so that's roughly where it's at. So I'm gonna have to move it a little bit this way or that, because it is pitch black and it's just magical.
It is, because then the photo comes through and you're like, wow, that's amazing.
All of that is there, and I can't see it.
And all of the stars are really beautiful where we live. So we're going to be doing or trialing more of that until we find, some other hobby to take us.
I got so excited yesterday. I was like, oh, we should make dinner. And then I was like, but first, like when Amy started making dinner, I'm like, I'm just going to go outside and see if there's a clear sky.
See if we can see the stars. But
and
it's
you're
pretty
like,
cloudy
you
this
left me
weekend.
alone, but it was really cloudy, so it was fine. I came back in and helped cook dinner.
You did.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. What else have we been up to? Well, here's some exciting news. Last week, we booked flights to go to GenCon.
Yeah.
So that's the first time we've said that on this channel, but we are actually attending GenCon in August of this year. So we're headed back over to the States after having just been there in March, but heading back over there because we were holding off for a long time. We had tickets that were originally from 2020 because we had planned to get married in the US and then go to GenCon, and of course none of that happened. But the tickets have rolled over, and this is actually the last year that the tickets can be used. Not that that has anything to do with the decision making of whether to go or not, because that is by far the cheapest element of the whole endeavor when you're traveling from Australia. The flights at the moment are outrageously expensive.
Accommodation, the logistics of moving around,
all of it is super expensive. But, at the same time, this is what we choose to do. This is what brings us joy.
Yeah.
And we just had such a wonderful time connecting with all of the board game community that we, got to meet at both Dice Tower West and Gamma earlier in the year. And so we just want to, continue doing that. And, we haven't organized anything formal that we're going to do there. We're just going on our regular personal tickets, and we're going to go and enjoy the events.
Check it all out.
And just hang out and play games. So we're really excited about that. And we will probably, fill you in with more details as we get closer.
Yeah.
And what else?
I think that's it. That's a lot of things to do in a week.
That is a lot of things to cover off in a couple of weeks. So we did start a new segment on the channel called This Just In. But in the last couple of weeks, we haven't had that much come in. Interestingly, what I did have come in before in the last episode was this playmat. And that's all that had arrived in the mail. And I was like, why have I got this and no game? And now finally the game has come in, which is called Pagan Fate of Roanoke.
It's Roanoke.
Roanoke.
Be my guess.
And this is actually a 2-player only asymmetric game where you play as the witch and the witch hunter. So a little bit like Septima.
There's a lot of going back to that. Yeah, witch and witch hunter. The old
but
rivalry or duel or
so in this game you both have an individual deck of, I think it's like 50 cards, and there's a lot of like hand management and things in this game, so I'm really excited to try that out. This is a really heavy box actually. It's 2-player only, but this feels like there's a lot of things in it, and if that wasn't enough, of course the Kickstarter edition comes with this little goodies which says thank you to more than 2,000 backers, and in here there are wooden witch action pawns, gloom tokens, lots of wooden things, lots of extra cards, cloth bags, metal coin. So lots of goodies in here. I haven't opened it yet, but I'm excited to. And this is the ginormous playmat for a 2-player only game. It's like huge, but I'm really excited. Actually, that game is currently, I believe it's still on Kickstarter at the moment with the second print run. And there were some corrections that had to be made to the new edition. So I'm going to have to look at those carefully before we open that up. But you also had one.
I do. I've got this nice little package from Project Nisei, who are the fan-run, not-for-profit keeping Android Netrunner, the card game, alive. So very kindly, Project Nisei has sent us the starter pack and one of the expansions, because they're now kind of printing expansions and additional cards that are compatible with the base game. And so very excited to finally get into Android Netrunner and check out the expansion cards that they've done with them.
I'm sure a lot of people saw it, but Shut Up and Sit Down did a special video on this same system as well. So it looks like they're trying to get it into the hands of more people to test it out and get some love going again. And I'm intrigued because obviously it has such a reputation.
And I think that's such a statement that a game can resonate so much with its kind of audience and the gamers that play it, that even if it goes out of print, the gamers rally together and make sure to try and do so much work to keep it alive.
So much dedication.
So that's, so I'm excited to check it out and play it.
And we also, in the mailbox, we had a postcard come through as well.
One from Colorado, Centennial State. And this says, Dear ThinkerThemer, you two make such a sweet couple. Wishing you a lifetime of true joy, happiness, and gaming. Oh, congratulations from Ken.
Thank you so much, Ken. That's really
lovely, lovely postcard.
That's really lovely. And you can still send us a postcard. They are still trickling through, which is incredible. And every time we get one, we're just so happy. So our address is always below in the description if you want to send us a postcard. And before we get into games, I would just wanted to add that if you've ever thought about joining our YouTube membership, we actually had a viewer ask, why don't you do Patreon? And the reason is, when we originally set up YouTube memberships, it was because we wanted to keep everything in one place. We have to recognize the limitations of both having full-time jobs and then trying to do channel stuff on the side. It means that, if we're spread ourselves too thin, we're not going to give anything enough attention. So it's why we're pretty quiet on all other social media channels except for on YouTube. And so keeping everything in one place made it really easy. And if you don't know this, but our YouTube connects to our private Discord. So once you become a member, it automatically unlocks our private Discord. And it's just a fabulous community there. So if you have ever considered becoming a YouTube member, we would greatly appreciate your support. The videos we do each week, they do take a lot of our weekend. And of course, this work is unpaid aside from the support from our members. The previews for September and ARCs, none of that is covered by
any money
payment
from publishers.
So please, if you want to join for just 1 month, buy us a coffee. It would be greatly appreciated. And of course, come and join our Discord. We would love to have you there. But we also have some IAQs today. So let's talk about a couple of those. So first one, I'm just going to call you Mr. U because you have an interesting YouTube handle. It says, Happy Pride, thank you. And it's almost, the last week of Pride Month. So happy Pride to you too.
Yes.
What is the most accepting country where you felt free to be yourselves with no fear? And what are areas where we feel less comfortable? And I mean, my first reaction to that is I think we're pretty careful no matter where we are. We grew up in a time that was less accepting in general, and so you always had to be kind of aware of your surroundings.
Always wise to exercise caution.
Yeah, exactly. And that's especially true if you're in a country where you don't understand the cultural norms or maybe you don't speak the language, then of course we're even more careful. But having said that, we're not very publicly affectionate anyway because of growing up in that kind of era and time. But I do remember that, back in the day when I used to travel and you'd book a room, like a single room with a queen bed or a king bed, and they would always change my room to two singles without asking, and then you turn up at the room. It's just so confronting.
It's like the assumption that, it's like you couldn't possibly be a couple.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. So that doesn't happen almost at all anymore.
No, I think it always, people, they'll ask and they'll just, without assuming, what kind of bed configuration would you like?
Yeah, so that's much better. I would say that in terms of places that are more or less safe, it's probably places within countries that are more and less safe. Like even in Australia, I feel much more comfortable in Metro Melbourne where we live versus more regional Australia areas.
Potentially, you kind of get a sense for further. Like, I'd say that I would always kind of exercise caution and then wait to kind of get a sense for how it sort of feels. And yeah, I would agree that if you're, in Metro Melbourne, you're going to be felt very comfortable. If you're at a gay bar, you're going to feel extremely comfortable.
Yeah, and you do
or in
feel
a gay
your
area.
You do feel your energy relax a bit if you're walking around somewhere like the Castro in San Francisco or West Hollywood in LA. When you're in those places, I feel way more comfortable. But in general, I feel like okay traveling around. It's not too bad. But thank you for that question. Lisa asked, do we think of our collective games as Maggie and Amy's games, or are some Amy's and some Maggie's and some both?
That's a great question. I would say most of our games I would think as our games.
I'm glad you said that, because that's what I think as well.
It'd be very rare unless it was like there's a game that Amy just does not play, does not like, and it would be a solo game, like Sleeping Gods type things. Like, well, then that's a Maggie game. And probably every abstract is like, that's an Amy game. Like, the only reason it's staying in the collection is because, she really loves them.
One of us is going to fight for it.
But aside from that, the rest of the games will be our games.
And I still think of it as our collection, including all those games.
A good question,
Yeah, and do we usually keep unplayed games in shrink? I have feelings about this.
Yeah, well,
You're more haphazard.
I love to just open it and like have a look at things, because two things. One, there's that excitement of like, I want to see what's inside, and it's like you get to kind of start enjoying the game, even if you're not playing it, because it's like a game is not just the experience of the game. Like, there's all the art and all the production that goes into the making of the actual game and the components of a game. So that can be enjoyed by itself, even if you're not playing it.
Although Maggie has quickly learned to ask me before opening the game.
Gotten in trouble now enough times to know.
I think because...
But you're more of a collector.
And
this has always been the case with even...
I would say it's because 9 times out of 10 I buy the game. So 9 times out of 10 I've done all the research. I've found the exact version that I want. I know it's coming. And when it arrives, it's not a surprise to me. A lot of the time it's a surprise to Maggie.
Yeah, I'm like, what's this?
Even if she was involved in the conversation about should I back this, she never remembers what the game is.
Yeah, I'd be like, what's this? Like, you talked about it. Like, did I? I don't even.
So I know it's coming. I might be waiting. I might be following the emails and be like, oh, it's about to be delivered. And then it arrives. And if I'm out and Maggie is going to unbox that,
yeah, I'm pretty good about that now. I'm not going to open something.
I would be so upset.
Yeah, and rob you of that experience of the unboxing.
Generally, these days, I've been keeping more and more of them in shrink. So if you see in the video, the shelf that has a lot of our shelf of opportunity games, a lot of them are in shrink. But that's because lately I've found that if I'm encouraged to open it, I also try and learn it closer to the time of opening it, because otherwise I punch everything, I sort it all out and I put it away and I never look at it again. And so it's the incentive of like getting to open it and punch it that is also going to encourage me to then learn it. And like, so I'm kind of holding off at the moment. That's why these games aren't unpacked until I'm ready to play them.
Yeah. Okay.
So because it gives me more of a drive to get them off the shelf.
Yeah.
So that at the moment is the motivational game that
where I would be like,
myself.
I would get to start enjoying it, even if I'm not getting a chance to play them. I still get to like enjoy look at this bit and look at that bit, which potentially might make me even more excited to get it to the table, because now I know what's in there. It's like, I want to play with those things. Differences of opinions. Yeah.
Tanya asks, imagine you're at Essenspiel and you get the chance to meet Uwe Rosenberg. What would you ask? And would you have any certain requests?
I don't know what I would ask. I'm a kind of strange person like that, because often, like, when there's a question of like, what celebrity would you like to meet if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, dead or alive? I'm like, I genuinely don't know. I'm not that. Yeah, I think if I were to meet Uwe and I had to ask him a question, I think if I just met him, I'd be like, hey, love your games. But if there was a question, I probably would ask, which game that you've designed are you personally most proud of, and why? Because I was actually just talking about this to a colleague, where often the thing that you're most proud of the stuff that you produce is not necessarily what's the most commercially successful thing that you've done, or the most successful thing in the eyes of other people. And so, yeah, it'd be good to, it's always interesting to kind of know, well, personally, for you as the person creating it, what's your favorite? Like, and why? Like, why are you proud of it?
Interesting.
What was that moment of like, yeah, nailed it. Like, that was it. That's, yeah.
I wouldn't say anything. I just go into a little bit of like weird fangirl mode.
Kind of like, oh no.
Yeah, and this happens to us whenever we see a celebrity in real life or anything. And it doesn't even not a huge celebrity, just anyone, and
just
someone
people.
from reality TV, just anything. I just kind of go into shutdown mode. And Maggie is always really amused at how starstruck I get.
Yeah, I'm like, it's just a human person. Like, there's no...
And, you know, I thought about a million times what I would say to Mariah Carey when I met her, if I ever got to meet her. And basically I just said, I love you. Like everybody else says to her. And she said, oh, thanks, I love you too. Like, not really. So thank you for that great question. Actually, Tanya also asked, who else in the board game world would we like to meet? Anyone in the board game world, and I'm going to throw some out there because
again,
we've had
I don't even know.
We've had the opportunity to meet a lot of great people in the board gaming world in our last few trips. I would love to meet actually Phil Walker Harding, who is an Australian designer who lives in Sydney, so it's not that out of the question that we would meet at some point. But actually, I reached out to him quite early when we started the channel, and he was just so gracious with his advice, and I just think his games are really amazing. So I'd love to meet him. Also, Ian O'Toole is someone that we've had so much communication with, also lives in Australia. Haven't had the chance to meet, would love to meet him one day. And I think Shut Up and Sit Down are so elusive.
Yeah, they really are.
Like, you don't often see them at conventions, and, you know, they have their show, but otherwise they're not as interactive, I guess, with like on socials and things. And so I think I'd be pretty starstruck if I met them as well.
I'd be like, hey, you know, hey, yo. But that would be cool. That would be cool.
Yeah, but I think we'll just park the rest of the questions for now because I'm conscious we have some games to talk about. So let's get into some games.
All right. So let's get into our first game. Our first game that we're going to be talking about is Oh My Goods by Alexander Pfister. Now, Oh My Goods is such a tiny... I was always very intrigued by such a tiny card-based game that seemed like a Euro-y experience. Because I feel like there should be pocket versions of every single type of game or game mechanic, so you can use it as a way of introducing non-gamers or people who are kind of curious about the hobby. So it's like, this always appealed to me as a, hey, this is like a Euro in a card game version. Essentially, in Oh My Goods, you're playing as different craftsmen or craft people, and you're going to be, ultimately trying to build different buildings that produce different goods, creating a bit of an engine with that, and ultimately being able to have the most victory points, which, you know, it's a combination of the buildings that you've been able to create and all the different assistants that you've been able to hire. Now, cleverly, the way this works is it's all cards. This actually plays 2 to 4 players. I was looking at it more as a solo experience for which you actually need to bring in one of the expansions, but let's just focus on this one first. With this one, we've played it as a 2-player experience. You start with your initial building, which is a char burner. All these cards are multi-use cards, so if you're using them on the back, and the back of the card is just signifying that they're good units. And so you put them on top of your building to signify how many goods you have of the type of good that is produced in that building. And also every good has a dollar value or a coin value. So ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that you're generating a lot of goods that then you can use as coin, essentially, as currency, to purchase and build new buildings. Interestingly, what's going to be happening is every round you're going to have a market that is a variable market, because you'll have the cards are going to start to splay from left to right, and you're waiting for 2 halves of the sun to come out for the first market. So you start showing, you know, one card at a time. You see 1 half of a sun go ooh, and waiting for the second card to come out. And so that line of cards could be only 2 cards, or it could be 5 cards, or it could be 10 cards. So that element is quite exciting. Then the next thing is, based on those elements that are there, you need to look at your buildings to decide, okay, which of the goods am I going to need to be able, for my building to be able to produce? Because in this game, you don't actually have to pick those resources. They just have to be available in the market for you to be able to produce. So, for example, I may need 2 brick and 2 coal to produce something. As long as there are 2 brick and 2 coal in that market, I'm going to be able to produce.
Mm-hmm. But you can also add the cards that are in your hand.
You will,
as well. So you've got a hand of cards that give you additional resources. You've got the market cards that are depicting resources that are available as a pool to anybody.
Yeah.
But the trick is that you have to choose one building that's going to produce that round when you start, because you've only got 1 worker card.
You start with just the 1 worker that you need to kind of commit and allocate to 1 building to produce.
Yeah.
Then the next layer of that is you get to decide, are you going to produce, high quality, and meaning you have to meet every single resource in order for that building to produce, or are you going to produce sloppily, meaning that you can actually just, you can get a discount of 1 resource. And while looking at the market going, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it, then you can go, I'm just going to go sloppily and hope for the best. Because then that's not over. You then get a second round of that market that obviously we have no idea what resources are going to become available, but you get a second round of that market, and then you hope and pray that your goods, that the goods that you need are going to come through.
Yeah, that burnt me so many times.
So many times. But again, you can play it fairly safely and only go for things that that between the goods that are already showing in the market and the ones that you have in your hand that you'd be able to pay for, you would definitely be producing. If you come short and you weren't producing sloppily, you produce nothing. So it's a waste of a turn.
So you're kind of gambling that the resources that you need are going to appear.
Yeah.
And it's a good payoff if it does. But sometimes you only get 2 additional resources because the 2 halves of the sun come out immediately following each other, and you're like, oh no, I've wasted this turn. Yeah. But what I like about this game is there's a bit of a race element, because the game will end as soon as someone builds their 8th building, which means that there's multiple ways to win in this game. One is you could build really cheap, easy to build buildings and just pump them out as quickly as possible.
A lot of those victory points from those buildings,
Yeah, and stop your opponent from building up too much of an engine where they are producing a lot of money each round. So that is one strategy. You can kind of race and end the game quickly. The other, of course, is that you can really nurture the engine building element, because as you build buildings that create more interesting materials, you can then feed those more interesting materials into other buildings to produce higher value goods. And so you do start to get this engine happening. And once you start collecting lots of different types of goods, you get the opportunity to have a secondary production occur in the building that you're using by feeding in additional resources in the same turn. So that's a bit confusing to talk about when you haven't played it, but essentially it means that the longer the game goes on, the more materials and money you have available to you to get things done.
For the chain production, it's called.
That's right, The other thing you can do is you can, you can hire more workers. And if you're hiring more workers, then each round, instead of activating just 1 building, you can activate 2 or more buildings.
Yes.
But you can't get a worker until you've built up your little community with enough buildings that are indicated on those
standards.
Worker cards.
They'll only come and work with you or for you because they're assistants, really. So they'll only come and assist you if you've got the right types of or combinations of buildings. So they're kind of color-coded.
But the interesting tension I always found in the competitive game of this was just the one person, usually Maggie, doing a much better job of building the engine while I'm trying to rush the end game. And sometimes that paid off for me, and other times it really didn't. A lot of the times it really didn't, because I didn't have enough money at the end of the game, which also gets converted to victory points. So at the end of the game, all you're doing is really adding up all of the victory points that are on your buildings that you've built. You're translating all of your...
all the assistants as well. So all the points and assistants. And then translating all the goods which are then coins, so they all have their own coin value.
Into money and then into victory points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So 5-to-1 kind of ratio thing.
Yeah, and I think the time on the box is pretty indicative of a 2-player game, about half an hour. And it's a lot of game in a little box. I personally find it a little bit fiddly for my taste, but I found that the more that I played it, the quicker it certainly got, and it was much easier.
I like how it's one of those games where there's not really a lot of interaction between players. So you're kind of, you've got, which
I like that less.
Yeah, so Amy likes interaction. I really just love being able to do my own thing, build my own kind of production line of things. The only point of interaction is really those assistants, because someone might take the one that you wanted. But again, because you can see what kind of buildings they need, often I'll be like, oh, I really want to get that assistant, but I can see that Amy's nowhere near being able to recruit them because she doesn't have the right building. So there's not really that much of a rush. Then the other element that I really enjoy actually is which some people may not like, is the uncertainty of that market going, oh, is it going to be a really big and, market with lots of stuff in it that I'm going to be able to have my choice of, which building do I want to get to produce? Or is it going to be one of those 1 card, 2 cards, and it's done, and you're like, oh no.
But I do like the way that half of it is revealed before you have to make a decision about which building you're going to activate, because then you have at least partial information and you can take a safe choice if you want to take a safe choice.
It's not just pure gambling.
I think that's also why I lost a lot. I don't like taking the safe choice.
Yeah, but there's and I'm very risk averse, so I would often just be like, no, I'm just going to do the safe.
This is a sure thing.
Yeah, the safe way here, which is I'm just going to build sloppily. I know that I can afford it with the stuff that I have in my hands. So I actually really enjoy this. There is going to be, as I kind of foretold or forementioned, there are expansions to it, which then turn it into a bit of a campaign and add a solo mode to it. I haven't actually had a chance to play with that yet, but I'm really, really looking forward to it, because what my understanding of it is that then it adds a bit of a story mode to it, and it starts introducing different characters and different buildings and new stuff and items and specific specific goals that you're trying to meet. So there's going to be set conditions by the end of the game in order for you to be able to kind of beat or win that game. So so that I haven't actually played there's 2 of them, I believe, but so I won't go into that in detail. Probably once I have, we will. But that's Oh My Goods by Alexander Pfister.
Thank you. Now, the next game that we're going to talk about is a little game called Parade. Now, we came across this game first at Dice Tower West when our friends Monique and Naveen at Before You Play taught us how to play this. So it has already a very special place in our heart because of that. But since they introduced it to us, we have played this game so much. We played it the whole time we were at Dice Tower West. And since coming back to Australia, we've picked up our own copy, and it's been such a hit with all of our friends. This game, Parade, takes place in the world of Alice in Wonderland, and there's going to be a Wonderlandian parade of people. And what you're going to be doing on your turn is you are going to be adding someone to the back of that parade from your hand of cards. Now, from here, it's a fairly abstract game, so I'm going to switch.
That's the end of the thematic.
That's the end of the theme.
Foray,
So I'm going to talk about how it plays from a more abstract perspective, but each card that you have in your hand has a suit or color associated with it, as well as a number on that card. When you add the card to the back of the parade, which is a row of Wonderlandian people or cards that are in the center of the table, you are going to be counting from the back of the parade the number that is depicted on your card. So if I put down an Alice card, that is a number 3, I'm going to be counting back 3 cards from Alice, and then every other card after that in the parade is at risk. They are at risk of leaving the parade, and they are going to leave the parade if the number is equal or lower than that of Alice, so 3 or lower, or if that card is the same color as the card that I've just played. And when we don't want Wonderlandians to leave the parade, because when they do, they are going to be placed face up in front of us, and they are going to be negative victory points according to their value at the end of the game. However, there's a little twist that makes this game really fun, and that is that at the end of the game, the person who has the most cards in each suit in front of them is going to be able to turn over those cards, and instead of being worth negative whatever the value of the card, so -7 or -3, they're actually only going to be worth -1. So if you start to collect a certain suit, then you might as well go all in on that suit once you start getting too many of them, because then you actually might end up saving yourself some victory points at the end of the game. And why this game is really clever is because at the end of the game, you are going to have 4 cards left in your hand. 2 of those cards are going to be discarded, and the other 2 are going to be added to your cards that are on show in front of you before the final scoring of the game. So if you want to be very sneaky, at the end of the game, you can surprise someone else around the table by putting down 2 additional cards that you've been keeping up your sleeve that put you in the majority for that suit, and therefore you are going to make them lose a lot of victory points and yourself not as many. Yeah. So there's a couple little twists that make this really fun, but it is quite agonizing to think about the card that you're going to play each turn, because often there is not a good option. So you're constantly counting and trying to work out what is the
lesser evil. What is
bad option here?
Least damaging. Yeah.
And so the game is going to end when someone actually has one of each of the suits in front of them, or when the pile of cards runs out. And so it's just a really interesting, cute game. It's so easy to teach, and it's just so crunchy in the decisions that you have to make. And everyone feels like, oh no, I've now got no bad options. And as that parade gets longer and longer, the amount of cards that are at risk, you could end up taking so many cards in one turn. So you've really got to think through, what is the right order that I need to play these cards? And so there's a bit of hand management as well.
Yeah, the key word there is excruciating. Like some of those excruciating moments of going, everything that I could play here is bad.
Everything is bad.
So what's the least bad thing? But it's a good excruciating, because it ends up being kind of funny and kind of like, oh no, look at all the stuff that you ended up taking.
Yeah, but what else is actually really funny about this game is that you could think that you're going to have to take a lot of cards, and then the person before you ends up playing a card
has a disastrous
turn, takes all the cards, and all of a sudden you're in the clear.
Oh, thank goodness.
And there's also, the tension of playing a higher card. That means that more cards are safe, because you're counting back from, if you play a 7, for example, that's 7 cards that are safe. But then any card that's lower than that from the remaining cards is obviously going to be more at risk of being in your collection of Wonderlandians. So anyway, just a lot of really interesting decisions. It's a great little game. So happy to have this in our collection. That is Parade. And the last game that we're going to talk about today is a cooperative game.
What?
Look out. And it's called Decorum, or Decorum, if you will. And this is by Charlie and Harry Macken and Drew Tenenbaum. And it's a game of passive-aggressive cohabitation.
Oh, just like life. So in Decorum, what we're going to be doing is we are flatmates, and there's all sorts of different relationships where we're cohabitating, we're living together, and we all have very specific ideas as to how we want our house to look like in terms of the combination of the style, if it's something that's going to be modern or unique or more of an antique, the color as well, and also the types of goods. It could be
furnishings.
The furnishings, exactly. And so the problem is we have to make sure that we reach consensus, but we can't directly say what it is that we want. So we're all going to have our objectives, but we're going to be like, as you're messing around with things and going, this is how I like to be like, no, I hate that, or oh, I absolutely love that, or no, that could not possibly be, which feels like they say is passive aggressive. Like that feels aggressive just in the passive, like it's just like an unknowingly, why can't you just be direct about what is it that you want?
And the way that a turn works is that there are scenarios that you're going to be setting up for each game of Decorum. So at the beginning of the game, we each get assigned a character card that is going to specify exactly how you need to have the house set up in order to win the game.
To be satisfied, to be fulfilled.
Yes. But you don't know what the other player has on their card. So you're trying to find a house that satisfies both of your wish lists or satisfying conditions.
All of your goals, like individual goals.
But But all you're going to be doing on your turn is you're going to be able to either swap out an item with another item, or swap out a wall color with another wall color, or remove an item from the house. So you're basically only making one change to the house, and then you're going to check in with your cohabitant.
Yeah.
You're going to say,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
And they're going to tell you whether they feel great about the decision you've just made to repaint the room.
Or just like, meh, you know, I could take it or leave it. Not
Or,
invested in it either way.
I hate that painting. I can't believe you put that painting right there. How could you? That is hideous. And so on and so forth, until you both find that happy medium where you can both exist happily in the space. And the way the game works is you will be monitoring the number of rounds that you're taking, or the number of changes you're making to the house. And along the way, there are going to be little spots where after the 15th try of moving around the house, you'll get the opportunity to share one of your conditions with your partner. So you'll be able to say, you know what, I actually can't have any green objects that are retro, or I need to have
clean and with one of your goals, one of your objectives.
And some of them, as the scenarios progress, they get harder and harder, and some of them feel impossible to get through, because you have to have one room that is identical to another room, or you can't have more than one green item, or all of the rooms need to be painted in warm colors. And then of course, the other person has all these conditions that kind of are very much interwoven with yours that are going to make for some difficult decisions along the way.
Get caught up in these, like, chasing one another. It's like, okay, well, I'll try and change things to kind of suit your thing, or what I think your thing is, and then them going, no, so then I'll try and change it. Yeah, you kind of, so it's hilarity ensues.
But there is a lot of deduction in this game, because you're trying to work out what are the conditions that my partner has. I keep going to say opponent. I clearly don't play enough co-op
Clearly
games.
not understanding the
My
co-op.
opponent in life.
Yes.
Trying to decorate a house.
It's my title. Yes.
Trying to work out what exactly Maggie has on her list, so then I can work my objectives in and around that. I really enjoyed. Well, first of all, I really enjoyed this game.
We were playing through this, and I was sort of playing it, kind of going, okay, and I'm like, you are loving this. And I'm like, why are you loving this so much? It's because you get to say, no, I hate it. No, Maggie, that's wrong. It's like, is that why?
I think because this game relies a lot on the banter that you have as a couple, and the way that you kind of interpret the game to be funny or interesting. So, you know, if Maggie's like removes a lamp, I was like, oh, Maggie, I loved that lamp. Like, why would you move that lamp? And it's just the banter that you have, and it's really, it can be really funny. And so it's highly interactive, which I really enjoyed about the game, but it's just that added like social element that makes it really interesting, and it's really great at a 2-player count. It does play more players, but you get the sense that this was actually made for 2 players. And the way the scenarios unlock,
the progression of the campaigns, of the campaign essentially, all the different scenarios. It's really good.
The fact that I think there's 15 different scenarios. 20 that come in the box, that's right. But I'm only saying 15 because at 12 and 15 you get to open some secret envelopes that have additional components that bring in a new element into the game, which is what was driving me to continue through all the scenarios. I'm like, I want to know how does this get harder?
Dug with a bone over here. We need to get to it.
But also, I think that the cute theme is also kind of hiding the fact that this is a very clever abstract puzzle as well. So you're trying to find the point at which you can satisfy all conditions on both cards. And that really appeals to me as a thinker, as someone who's trying to piece together what exactly is Maggie trying to do? Why does she keep changing that? And if she does keep changing that, then maybe I need to change the way I'm trying to achieve one of my objectives. And so it really appealed to me on multiple levels. I love the theme. I just think it's such
it's
a
very
clever theme for the puzzle that it is. And it wouldn't be as fun without that thick theme on
Absolutely.
top of it.
I'm going to say it does feel quite, I really enjoy I get a giggle out of the theme. As a themer, though, I did find that after a while, because it is at its core a very abstract puzzle, and yes, you are interacting and you're kind of chatting about like, no, I hate it, I love it. It gets to a point where I'm like, okay, like now it's just too abstract.
But you're also not a gamer that loves interaction or that like the away from the board, like social element away from the
it's
board.
like I just want to do my thing.
I
just do? So it's probably not a game for me in the long term. I've enjoyed like all the campaigns and things that I've gone through it. But now it'd be a game where I'd be like, hey, why don't you play it with a friend or someone that comes and visits us?
I think that although there's only 20 scenarios in here, you can download an app and then there's like an unlimited number of scenarios. Yeah. I really did like, there's a little bit of flavor text around each of the scenarios that kind of explains the situation that you're in and who you're living with and why the house is the way it is. So I enjoyed that. But this is a game I'd probably play through each of the included 20 scenarios and then I will hand this off to a friend and allow them the pleasure of working through the 20 scenarios.
As we were playing through it, we knew our friends who would love going through that as well. And I go, you know, so-and-so is really going to enjoy this and so-and-so is going to...
Yes.
So it's like there's a queue of people now that are going to be enjoying,
But if you're looking for a great 2-player game that is cooperative but has like quite a funny theme and a great puzzle, I'd encourage you to check out Decorum. But that is all of the games that we have for you this week. Thank you so much if you're still here after an hour worth of footage listening to us.
Rambling on and on.
Always. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a lovely week ahead. Take care of yourselves and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.